I don't think we actually deserve an X rating. More like an NC-17 sometimes.
Oh no, go
Sometimes
for the X. NC-17 is such a cop out.
I know, but I know that do they even still use ratings? I know, like, hey, welcome to the Grindhouse. We're here to yeah, exactly. I'm sitting here just getting stuck on this whole thing about ratings, which I'll talk about in a second. I'm JC. I'm your host. I'm here tonight with Bryce, Terry, Mike, and Gwen, and we're here to do our usual rambles and all kinds of other fun stuff. And believe it or not, last week we actually had our highest number of people in chat, which is really depressing considering it was under 10. But hey, you got to
I mean,
start
Baby
somewhere.
steps.
gotta start somewhere.
But people do watch it after the fact, so there is like views on it after. But I guess I don't know. We don't have that rabid following yet. But anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and open with that question: do they still use ratings in movies anymore?
Oh,
'Cause
sure they do. Sure they do.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
Yeah.
about, and I don't
The X is
remember.
not wondering.
Because, like, remember when you see a movie trailer on TV or whatever, you would see, like, the rating at the bottom? Maybe that's changed since.
They still do it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And you just don't see him in the. I mean, it's sad. It's been forever since I've seen a TV commercial. But last one I saw, they don't really put the rating in the commercial anymore.
Okay. All right. So they still use ratings. Although I have a feeling rated X isn't used very much anymore.
It's the kiss of death. Although nowadays, before it was the kiss of death, because if it had an X rating, you couldn't advertise it in local newspapers. But since kind of newspapers have almost gone the way of the whatever extinct animal you want to use, I don't know if that's true.
Well, if I
go ahead.
remember correctly, RoboCop almost got an X rating.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
there's a bit of history there that I remember reading years ago. So I may get some of the details wrong, but when they did the trademarking for the movie rating system, they did not do a trademark for the X-rated movie for the people that are doing the trailers and whatnot. And somebody else has that. So movie companies cannot actually rate something as X, from my understanding of what I read.
The complications of Hollywood.
I'm sure someone will look it up and tell me I'm wrong.
although I do like the fact that this stream is rated X, but not triple X, only a double X.
I'm just trying to see if Edward Penis Hands actually has a.
No.
My eyes, my eyes.
But I've just actually seen if it had an X rating. Someone found this and gave it to me.
I'm just
Yeah, sure. That's what you say now. Somebody found this and gave it to you. Somebody on eBay found it and gave it to you after you sent them money.
No, actually, I've had this for years. I mean, someone gave it to me years ago, by force.
It's my
You left it at your house.
But yeah, no, there's no rating on this. It just says all records establishing that all performers in this video and or package are 18 years or older in the custody of CS Man video team. And of course, it's Van Nuys, California. All right. Well, anyway, so there we go. There's my my weird thing that James does during the stream. Yay!
I was going to say, that's your new campaign setting.
Yeah, that's my new campaign setting. Edward Penis Hands. It's a fantasy, obviously. And anyway,
I think my cousin made a joke about that movie at some point, but I don't know if he knew that it was actually a thing.
So back in the 80s, and I think, well, they still do parody shows. So there was actually recently a Bob's Burgers parody of
oh boy.
porn parody. Yeah, it was actually really well done. Not that I watched it, but I saw a trailer for it. I have not watched it. Actually, porn's kind of boring these days. But in the 80s, I remember seeing the case for RoboFox, the lion thing. What Oh my god, there's just like a lot of porn parodies out there.
Why don't you have Chat GPT go ahead and write you a porn script?
Wow, I didn't even think of that.
Porn parody of Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that I'm
Oh,
sure
there-
that's been done. Sure, that's
they're actually. Hold on. Yeah, I think there's like several of them.
Who can
let's see.
forget?
I'm sure the Hobbit is a really short guy that's well endowed.
Yeah, exactly.
Who can
You got to
forget
get more things. The porn parody of War and Peace.
who
The
can
brothers
forget
Karamazov.
Oh, Lord of the G Strings.
There you go. Rule
There we
34.
go.
If you can imagine it, it's out there.
Oh yeah. You know,
Pretty sure there's shaving Ryan's privates. That's
No!
out there.
Oh my god.
That's it.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that, but thanks for sharing that and putting that in my mind.
There you go. That's a keeper. That's a freebie for me.
All right. Well, and we're a gaming podcast, so go figure.
Are we?
Yeah, I guess.
I wonder if there's any D&D porn. Probably.
No,
I'm
don't ask
sure.
that question.
Definitely.
I'm
well,
sure.
Terry, you remember Saturday when I was on your podcast? I was I showed like 3 or 4 books that were porn D&D.
And Baldur's Gate 3, there's that Bugbear on Ogre action that's been going through the tubes.
Oh yeah, that and apparently there's something where someone has sex with a bear too.
Oh, they have a warning right on the beginning of the video game. They say that there's, graphic violence and nudity and explicit content. So you're given absolutely no pretenses on what you're getting yourself into.
Hopefully it has a mature rating on it, and it's not like for kids 2 and up. It's,
No, it's 18 plus. Or M for mature.
All right, good.
I'm surprised it isn't A for adults, given there is like actual nudity. Like it's not like Skyrim where you need to like mod off the underwear. It's like actually like built into the game.
Yeah.
That was the thing that disturbed the heck out of me when I loaded it up. It's just like, now please describe how your penis should be. And I'm going, if a DM asked me that question, going back to last week, there would be an X card coming right up.
So it was Skyrim. I actually had so modded with all kinds of crazy stuff that it actually crashed on me and I lost all the saves on it. But I was using Mod Organizer 2, and I had everything from like, your standard like cool weapon and armor mods. I had nudity mods, sex mods, this mod, and it was crazy. It was like some weird, I don't know, it was like playing Second Life just and using Skyrim. It was pretty interesting. But then I added like one last mod, and then suddenly it just crashed the entire thing. So.
Now, did it crash from too many mods, or did it crash from going, no, I am not installing Schlong's Skyrim? That is the last thing.
No,
it's the Schlong Lord.
Well, no, Schlong's a Skyrim because you can shoot. Never mind. But anyway, it just got to the point where I would go introduce myself to an NPC and they'd be offering me like sex. So it wasn't even a fun game ananymore.
I believe you're letting us in a little bit too much behind the curtain about what kind of gaming you actually like with all the mods you're putting on.
It's not even so much behind the curtain as in with Schlong's Skyrim, what is clipping through the door before you.
Oh God.
All right. Yeah, I think if we were monetized, we would have lost it by now. So
There
anyway.
was a patch note in Baldur's Gate 3 that they had to fix an issue with a specific race, the Githyanki, where males would have their dicks clipped through clothing.
Wow.
Oh wow. That's just imagine a game where you don't even like have to put mods on. It's just like it comes with all the filth that you'll ever need. That's all right. So let's talk about gaming because this could just go down the tubes.
Wait. You mean we weren't talking about gaming?
Well, I guess we were with Baldur's Gate 3.
I mean, we could talk
It's
about
Skyrim.
Cyberpunk 2020 or 2077. God, I am old when I think of 2020.
Well, if you would have said Cyberpunk 2013, then you would have shown your
Yeah,
age.
bingo. Yep, you're true.
All right. So let's so Gwen, let's go ahead and kick off with because you actually had the most in-depth you know topic of the night. So
Yes.
so why don't you go ahead and introduce it, and then because I like the outcome, the difficulty in gaming conversation. So why don't you kick it off?
So I've been playing a lot of FromSoft games like Armored Core and Demon's Souls lately, and I've been playing FromSoft games for like years and years now. And I got my PS5, so I'm playing Armored Core and I'm playing the Demon's Souls remake, most of the Demon's Souls remake. I love my mech games, but I love my fantasy more. And it got me thinking about difficulty in games and difficulty in like Dungeons and Dragons as well. With difficulty in games, it kind of goes down to trying to find the balance between like fun and difficult. Like it's a challenge that you need to complete, and it's like, you know, you need to beat it, and beating it gives you satisfaction because it's actually like challenging. And then there's like difficult that is just annoying. And the best examples I could think of was like Demon Souls versus hard mode God of War. As Demon Souls is like pretty well balanced in that if you pay attention and you go it slowly and you're not rushing things, you'll likely die, but you'll likely learn from the experience and be able to come back and beat the obstacle that was in your way. It might take a couple tries, but you'll get there. And from what I've heard with God of War hard mode, that isn't really a thing. Like, it's not a difficulty in terms of like AI getting smarter and using different tactics or anything like that. It's just enemies have more health and you have less health. And so it's less of the game challenging you by making you have to think outside the box and, you know, changing your kit around and having to strategize with this specific situation, and more like, well, I just need to beat you to death slightly more than what I had to do before. And it's just not actually a good challenge. And with the tabletop RPG aspect of it, I was thinking about how Demon Souls, how it has its encounters. And there was one level I was playing last night and this morning that was very different from your standard like video game level. Like there were very, very few if you're telling me to restart, I'm not. Don't restart, please. I need you. So there were very few enemies in this this level. Like there were only maybe 10 enemies in total, but all of them moved slowly, had a like glowing light about them, but they could catch you in a spot that would basically be an instant kill. Because what they would do is they would emit a like blast of energy and it would stun you, and then they would sprint up to you and then eat your brain. They were basically mind flayers. And so you had to kind of like maneuver around them and get them into like specific spots where you're not facing them down the corridor, and you can unlock like cells because it's in this kind of prison, and like you can hide in the cells and then like wait for them to pass by and then go for the kill. And it especially helped because I found a ring early on that gives you not invisibility, but it makes you harder to detect by enemies. So it's like you can sneak around more. And I just found that really interesting, how it was like there were only a few enemies that didn't even necessarily pose a challenge because you could sneak up on them and get them in the back. But if like you were caught off guard by one, you'd really need to suddenly improvise and figure out what you need to do to get out of reach of their mind blast.
So Gwen, so first before we go into this, I want to say that you saved me from super frustration with Dark Souls when you said run through the door on the left, because for weeks I've been trying to defeat that demon. There's nothing that gives me an option. Like it, there's nothing. So, anyone here remember Don Bluth's Dragon's Lair game? The one
Yes,
that
Yeah.
you used to play where it would light up and you'd have to move the knob towards the light area, but you'd usually die and turn into a skeleton anyway. Um, that I mean, why did it do that? Why wasn't there like a little flash over on the left where I can look and go, "Oh, there's an open door," other than me just sitting there trying to kill this demon for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and just getting really frustrated with it. So, but
Yep.
I mean, that's also I mean that
There
kinda-
is a way to kill the boss early on, though, without just brute force. One of the starting items that you can get is fire bombs. And so when it first jumps down, you can actually just throw your fire bombs because they're not a pickup. You just start with them.
All right, cool. It's not like tab enable cheats, God mode.
And by the way, as a trivia thing, I think that character was named Dirk. I almost
Yeah.
seem to remember his name was
Oh,
Dirk.
yeah.
Yep, it was Dirk.
It was, I think, Dirk the Dauntless. I want to
I
say.
think you're
Dirk
right.
the Daring.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game was.
I know
I
that game
love-
because Stranger Things.
Well, but also like I spent so much money on that game because
Yeah.
it was broken by design. Like ultimately, yes, if you had the skills of someone on meth to be able to like hit the knob quick enough to get yourself to the next thing, you were good. But if you had to even blink for a second and you were just a little late
Hesitate
on,
and die.
yep.
Well, it's like the
So-
difference between Mario in the arcade machine and like the handheld version. Like, because when it was an arcade machine, they made it a lot more difficult because they wanted your money. But because you're playing it on a handheld and you're not feeding it more money, they changed the level design to be a bit more, not necessarily easy, just less.
Forgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, more forgiving. The handheld
So-
mode was more forgiving. The arcade machine was definitely not.
Growing up in San Francisco, and Bryce, I don't know if you remember that, and it's a stereotype, right? So I'm going to throw that out there. But I swear to God, every bowling alley I went to, every 7-Eleven that had games, there was the Asian dude. And the Asian dude would have a stack of quarters this high on the game. And he was just still playing on the first quarter. He would stop to let you play, kick your ass within like 3 seconds flat, put another quarter in and start playing again forever. And like that honestly, I mean, that's a difficulty in gaming right there. It's like, how do you beat the Asian dude so you can actually play the game for more than like 30 seconds? And I don't want to like, it's not that I'm trying to be like a racist or anything and saying that, oh, it's Asians that do it, but it was always, well, I mean, San Francisco too. But it was just always the Asian kid who had the like thin little mustache, the kind of proto mullet that kind of swung up in the back, and usually wearing a members only jacket or some sort of like t-shirt of something. You're sitting there going, where the hell did you get that? So anyway, that was my experience with video games during the time of Dragon's Lair. Like I never got to play anything I wanted to play because the kid with the quarters. So
why haven't you gone out and bought, your own arcade game to stick in your basement?
because as soon as I buy it, that Asian kid who's probably my age now will break into my basement and put a stack of quarters on it and sit there and play.
But you'll get free money.
It's the big bad evil guy that you were never able to defeat.
He's like a genie. He just kind
Yeah.
of like appears whenever you get.
Well, that's the whole thing. You monetize your haters. You give him install Dragon's Lair, so he has to literally relearn the whole thing from scratch.
There, yeah, and it was always a game like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat or like one of those fighting games. That's where he usually was, because he knew how to do those weird like button push button like swing the
And rip your
fucking knob.
spine out in like 3 seconds. Fatality.
I still can't, like, honestly, I must just not have manual dexterity or hand-eye coordination, because honestly, I can never do, like, I get happy if I accidentally do a special move, especially Street Fighter. Like I always like to play Chun-Li, and I'm just always doing this weird combination of like moving the knob and hitting buttons randomly, like just like button smashing. And I will get a maneuver, and then I'll feel good about myself. But other than that, I can't play it. So let's kind of keep this going on video games. So Mike, what was the video game? What was the difficult video game for you? Any time frame, but 80s, 90s were always kind of the time where video those things, not console, the
Arcade machine?
Arcade machine, thank you. So we're more prevalent.
So I'd go to the mall. This is when I was in high school. And there was one game that I loved to play, which was called Virtua Fighter. And at the time, it was considered cutting edge graphics. Now, if you actually go and look at the graphics for it, they're laughable. But it had, I think, 3 or 4 buttons and a joystick. And with the combination of pushing buttons and moving the joystick, you were able to get your guy to do various karate moves. And I never got past like the 4th guy. It was the damn ninja. I could just never beat the ninja. He always got me every single time. But I'd always, every time I'd go after school, I'd go to the mall, I'd get something to eat, and then I'd try and see if I could get past the ninja. So never could. It was a fun game. It's a fun game. I eventually got it on I think it came out on Sega Saturn, I think.
Okay.
I'm really dating myself. But yeah, it was that was my albatross, if you will.
Well, did you defeat him on Sega Saturn?
Eventually I did.
Okay. All right.
After many hours of playing, I did. I finally was able to get to the end of the game, but never in the arcade. Only after I was able to get my own personal copy and spend a lot of hours playing.
I'm picturing a teenage Mike like waking up in the middle of the night in a sweat, going ninja, and looking around, and then just going, "Oh, okay."
something like that, yeah.
All right, Bryce, what were your quarters wasted on?
Oh my gosh, arcades. Obviously, I probably sacrificed a college education to Dragon's Lair, and what was it? What was the other one that was the science fiction version of it?
Oh, Space Ace.
Space Ace, yeah. There's that one. Then they did this kind of ripoff of where they took they made Lupin 3 into like this video game type thing, and
yeah,
that was the thing. But for me, the ones that I still wake up in a sweat is that damned Red Dragon from Adventure.
Adventure.
Atari 2600.
Oh,
and it looked more like a duck.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, and it will just come screeching through and getting on that.
Oh wow. That's yeah. I had ColecoVision. Well, I had the Atari 2600. I had ColecoVision. ColecoVision. I remember the one game that for some reason was the one my grandfather bought me. But probably as like, I don't know, punishment, was Smurf. And all Smurf did was like, you just played the Smurf and you jumped over a fence. And if you missed the fence, you trip and fall and die. And then you start with another Smurf. Like there was no purpose to life except hopping a fence.
My God, it's Smurf genocide on that
Smurf
thing.
this stuff, man.
All right, Terry, what were your quarters wasted on?
I didn't waste a lot of quarters on video games because I was poor when I was growing up, so I never had that real opportunity. When I'd go to the pizza place, I'd play Asteroids or was it a Galaga?
Oh, Galaga.
I was never very good at either one of those two. Now, when I had a friend that had a video game machine that we played, and I am old enough to have actually played Pong on the original machine, so there you go. But the one that stands out for there is we played a lot of Missile Command and a lot of Space Invaders. And we stayed up for like 24 hours playing Space Invaders. And let me tell you, that is not a recommended sort of thing, because when we turned the thing off, it was hours before I'd stop hearing. It would not go away. I'm like, I thought I've lost my mind. Something's broken inside me.
Didn't Missile Command have that ball that you
Yeah.
had to like? Oh wow, yeah, yeah, and it got to the point where it was so fast that you're just like, yeah, screw it, end of the
Hmm.
world, just let the bombs fall.
Now, the only video game that I actually played and did well at is I was pretty good at Tiger Woods Golf, but I played Sonic the Hedgehog and beat it without using any cheat codes. That's the only
Wow.
video game I have actually
Nice.
beaten.
Oh wow.
Admittedly, I got to the final fight and lost the final fight like 3 or 4 times before I beat it. And then my daughter's like, "Oh, there's this code you can use where you can just skip all that other stuff and go right to this point." I'm like, "Why didn't you tell me that?"
All right, and Gwen, I'll ask you, but I think you're a little young for the days of quarter arcade games, or am I wrong?
Kind of. So I was around when there were arcade games. In like they're mostly in like theaters, like movie theaters and stuff like that.
Mhm.
We still even have them in a couple places. And I remember always looking at them, and my dad always like shaking his head and being like, "No, you're not playing on those." And because it was
That
just,
kind of
like,
stuff will rot
noisy.
your mind.
Exactly, that was my dad. And then he got me a GameCube, so you know.
Here, watch your mind at home.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. One of our watchers, Greg, had said that holographic arcade game with the time traveler guy. It was kind of like the Don Bluth games.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Well, I don't. Was there a
It
name
had like
to it?
this parabolic mirror that the image would be projected on, and if you looked at it the right way, it actually looked almost three dimensional. I barely remember it, but I remember that parabolic mirror that was under there. It gave this just fantastic illusion that it was something that was 3D.
All right, interesting. Like, yeah, I don't quite remember. Like, honestly, I don't remember that one. But then I think after playing Smurf, you just kind of start forgetting life in general.
After the 75th Smurf died.
Yeah, after a while, you're just it's depressing. Actually, it's like all I do all day is kill Smurfs.
That's my living.
That's my life. Yep. All right. So the question I bring up, and before we go into Terry's Kickstarter, because it's kind of a lead-in, is campaigns. Homebrewed or purchased is basically our question for now, because I thought about it while we were getting things started here, and I saw what the Kickstarter was going to be. But it is actually, I mean, it's pretty valid. Like, I know some people actually like to do. I make this bigger here. Hold on. Yay! There, made this bigger. I know some people swear by. They'll go, well, I've had a campaign that's been running for 40 years, and we did it on a piece of paper with crayons, and now we have crayons all over the wall. And that little town there I came up with, and Billy came up with that town, but then orcs invaded it, and not a town anymore. I mean, you have those sorts, and then you have the ones that swear by their published campaign works. Like, if it ain't Forgotten Realms, man, I'm not playing it, or it's Greyhawk, or it's some other weird set. Like, I know a lot of people who love Birthright, which actually was an excellent setting for AD&D Second Edition. But I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are, and we'll go back again to Mike, because I know you're someone who does a lot of campaign worlds.
Do you remember the stuff he put together, that map he created? I think we all know what the answer is going to be here.
And that was beautiful.
If it's not licensed.
I for a long time used Forgotten Realms. I used it because it was something I was familiar with. I had read the books, so it was very easy. It was very easy to fall back on because all of the questions were already answered. So if the players came up with a question, I knew I had the answer for it. I enjoy doing. I kind of got stuck in a rut. I did Forgotten Realms for a long, long time, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great campaign setting, but at this point, I'm at the point where I'm interested in doing other campaign settings. And of course, as Terry mentioned, I've been working on my own, and there's a lot of work involved, and you don't really realize how much work is involved until you actually roll up your sleeves and start doing it on your own. But it can be very rewarding, and the challenge is for me personally, my personal challenge is to try and make it unique and different, and not just a slight variation of something I've either read in a book, seen in a movie, or saw in another campaign setting. And still try and keep it, and still try and honor the genre, if you will. So yeah, the short answer is that I enjoy doing my own campaign settings, and it's important though to obviously take a census, find out what your players want to do, and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, the realm. I mean, I do agree with you. The realms has a lot of lore. I mean, you got years and years and years of campaign stuff that you can use, but there's always that actually guy who will play in a game and just go, well, because of the spell burn or whatever that thing was called, the spell plague.
Spell plague.
Yeah, because of the spell plague, didn't Elminster change his robes to like black with a red cushiony helmet on? I mean, but it's things like that, and then they're like challenging you on stupid shit. I mean, honestly, as a game master, I think you have to say, hey, this is my Forgotten Realm, so fuck off. But I can't stand those people who are like very diehard. Well, I shouldn't say that, because when anyone misquotes Tolkien, I get into like a nerd rage. But yeah, I mean, that's I think one of the downsides of a very well established game world is that you always have that guy who is going to point out stuff, and you just kind of have to shut it down. But Terry, homebrew or
First, I'm going to have to say, why don't you spend a few minutes telling us why Gandalf never actually said, "You shall not pass"? Okay, I probably shouldn't taunt him like that.
no taunting me.
The Kickstarter for today is Campaign Builders, Cities and Towns, which it's not by any of the major houses. It's by actually it is by Cobalt Press. Excuse me. So it is by one of the major houses, and it's a way to take and make your town and city settings more detailed if you want to go ahead and build it up your own way. It also came with a big old folio of laminated maps that I can pull out some of them here. Just big old laminated mats that you can use for various things inside the city. And while I have not used it in a campaign, I like the idea of building and customizing things. And I jumped the gun. We were talking about something else, weren't I?
Yeah, we're actually just...
I jumped the gun. So never mind. I will hold that for the moment. But it does feed into what I'm doing here. I like both. I like to take a standard setting, and I like to customize it. So I like to add my own flair to it. So, sorry, jump the gun.
No problem. We'll get to you soon enough, but now we at least know what we're going to be talking about. Bryce.
Oh, it's funny you should say that, because sadly, I don't play even though I love RPGs, I don't get a chance to play that often. So I'm a big reader. And after a while, 3/4 of my enjoyment comes from just reading all, like you said, all of the lore, the background material, all the thought that went into those things. But, very much like Mike said, you get your britches a little bit too big, and you're going, well, I'm going to create my own custom campaign. And next thing you know, when your entire week is spent in prep and everything on that, you can change on that. One thing I have been interested in doing is a couple of the OSR guys were speaking about, well, try starting small. Try starting with just like a local area and just use gratuitous amounts of encounter charts, and then just take meticulous records from that. And then you could really start building out a very improvisational and organic campaign. And I, unfortunately, tell the fuckers in San Francisco they need to start gaming again. But once if I can start trying that again, that would be something I would love to do. Of just going, let's start with a town, one point of interest, and a little bit of wilderness, and see what goes from that.
Yeah, there's actually, speaking of OSR, there is an OSR style of gaming that it's referred to as West Marches. And I
Oh
only
yeah.
heard about this about maybe 6 months ago or so. But the concept's really simple. So your group will change GMs, right? So everyone in the group will ultimately be a game master. And you start off with a little town, and one game master will create a scenario and take you out outside of the town and set up a scene, and that now becomes part of the lore of your story. Then the next game master will do the same thing, take your people out of the town and take you to some other area for another story. So basically, as you continue the game master rotations and the stories that evolve, you actually kind of like organically build out your campaign setting that's shared amongst everyone. And it can get really neat. I've heard a lot of people have been doing it now for a couple of years, and it's been working really well for them. But that is also another way, going into that inside out sort of mentality. That West March style is actually kind of sounds really neat. But,
Have you heard of patron level play also?
patron
Oh, I've
level.
heard of that.
No,
Yeah. What it is where if you've got a little well designed little campaign snippet right there, what you would do is the players in the game, you would have them set up as running these different little factions. So just imagine the old Caves of Chaos thing. You'd have like one player that would be running the um, during the off time when you're not adventuring. Some would be running the hobgoblins, some would be running the kobolds, some would be running the death cultists, and it'd be almost like this little play by mail game behind
Like a turn by turn sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that way, what it is then your players have got this, this even bigger and more rich. Oh God, I don't want to use the term tapestry, but I'm going to use it. Tapestry of adventure that they can kind of go in without you, the game master, burning burning your brain too much trying to do that. I haven't seen it yet. I've only heard people talk about it. I've seen like on Twitter people kind of do it a little bit. It sounds interesting, but the West March method, it sounds like it's taking that to an even next step on that.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's a game changer. Realistically, with gaming groups, it's adding so everyone gets a turn to build a world, which I think is cool. And Gwen, sorry to leave you out. A homebrew or bot setting.
So, as you know, I've been into D&D and stuff like that since I was 7. And when we first started, it was all custom games. Like, I didn't start playing like an actual like written setting until I was like 20.
Oh wow!
And that was Mines of Fandelver for 5e, I think it was. That was my first pre-written adventure that I was in, and I can definitely see the merits of both. And me as a GM, I prefer. Well, it kind of depends on the setting. Like for Shadowrun, I really like the pre-written stuff because they're vague enough that you can kind of do whatever you want with it. And there's like a vague guidelines of like who everybody is and what they're doing, but you kind of have free reign of like how everything looks, how you run it, and etc. And I definitely like that style, and I like having the kind of like coding for it of like knowing where's my brain trying to take this, like having that kind of outline of like, this is just an outline, a vague idea. Because a lot of games, like for example, Paizo likes to have like fully written out adventures, but they're like, oh yeah, you can customize things. And it's like, yeah, but if I customize something here, that affects something over in like book 3. And so then I have to adjust that, and then that affects something in book 4, and it's like a bit of a headache. And I know from experience with some of my friends that they almost get this fear of like stepping away from the adventure. Like one of my friends, I won't name names, but you know who you are if you watch this. He was running a Starfinder game, and it was a pre-written adventure, and it was a really good adventure. Like, we were all enjoying it, but he was very afraid to do something that was like outside of the box of what the adventurer had written, because he didn't read ahead. He didn't want to spoil himself because he wanted to kind of experience the adventure with us. But because of that, he was kind of scared of like, if I go off the beaten path at all, I might screw something up at, like, down the line. And so he had to like play that very cautiously. And so I definitely had better experiences with kind of like immediate, let's go make our own setting kind of thing. And
Yeah,
even with I like doing a lot of one-shot stuff. And for me, I don't like, one thing I've always dreamed of doing, but I don't like doing at all, is, going through, like, a map of, say, Ferelden, and picking a spot and being like, that's where I want to go, and I'll have an adventure here. And I've always loved the idea of doing that, but I definitely can't do that myself because then I get bogged down. Whereas if I choose, like, a one-shot with just something I made up, I can just quickly make things on the fly. I can feel comfortable doing that, and it's a lot better for that.
No, absolutely. I mean, and I get you with the Paizo stuff, because some years ago I ran Curse of the Crimson Throne, and that the first time I ran it, it definitely taught me a lesson in reading way ahead of time, because yeah, because you can't go back. It's like you screw something up, you completely
exactly.
One of the things.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that I discovered when I was running games all the time back in the Army was that it is not nearly as bad when you screw something up and you're playing along, as long as you are fast on your feet and able to go ahead and modify what you're doing as you go. And the players are pretty forgiving if something comes up, you're like, oh, I screwed that up there, we're just doing this. And just don't weird yourself out thinking, oh no, I'm going to screw something up. It can be handled on the fly.
Yeah, it's just like the one, but a lot of settings, and then we're gonna transition into the Kickstarter. But a lot of settings set it up that certain things need to happen in a certain, like, certain NPCs can't die, but your players always end up killing that NPC, and then it's like, oh shit, well, what do I do now? So
his brother Bob shows up to help you in the nick of time.
Yeah, but I find that more with Paizo settings than anything, where they really kind of railroad it, where it's pretty much like, if these things don't happen in this order, chaos ensues.
The beginner box adventures, and I say adventures as in like from the beginner box itself to Troubles in Otari to the sequel one that I forget what it's called, but it's
Abomination
like
Vaults.
I think so, yeah. Those ones all together kind of like stack onto each other, and you kind of need Abomination Vaults to fully get everything out of Troubles in Otari. You need Troubles in Otari and Abomination Vaults to get everything out of the beginner box.
Yeah,
the beginner box doesn't have any NPCs for like when the players go up to town, and so it's like, well, I guess I'll improvise them. And then you get Troubles in Otari, and it's like, oh, it has all of the people that I wanted, except like in very different situations and as different characters and whatever. And there's a gay gnome, but I love the gay gnome. He's so great.
I think it's just really the difference between too much information and not enough information.
Exactly.
And I think that's where WotC ends up, is that they don't give you enough information to run the games. But I kind of like that a little bit, because that gives you more freedom just to make shit up and do your own.
Well, that's exactly it. I want a game that says there will be no customizing in this game whatsoever. If you deviate one bit from this adventure's path, we will know, and we will be in touch with you legally.
They'll
This
send
game
Pinkerton to your house.
like this. Game auditors showing up.
All right, so that's a great segue, kind of game monitors to go into Kickstarter. So let me go ahead and share screen here, and Terry, you can.
Did we ask Mike?
Yeah, Mike. We
Didn't
started
ask
off
Mike.
with
Did you? Maybe I don't remember.
about campaigns, homebrew, and.
Oh yeah.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, you guys have been playing too much Smurf. That's
Smurf my brain.
Everything's all Smurfy.
Yeah, after Flaky Smurf bought it, we're out of
Well,
it.
I'm having flashbacks. It seems like I've already been down this road before, but I like the idea of being able to build a city or a town exactly the way I want it and customize it to meet my needs. There's something great about having a big city to go visit, having it detailed out, but you just know that you're going to build your own little places inside of it. You're going to put your own shops. You're going to put your own NPCs that are important for what you want to do. You're going to add the local color to what's going on with the bigger sort of pre-made projects. And I was attracted to this Kickstarter because it's a way to customize something that may already exist, to add in the more details to building a city or town than I would normally have. So I could see, sort of read that. Maybe it's my eyes. I can't read that.
Hold on, I'll turn it up. I'll turn it up to 11. There we go.
Oh,
But yeah, as you can see from this, you can determine all kinds of factors about its age, its size, what kind of government it is. It's got things to help you think out how you might want to construct a city on your own if you're not used to building one and adding all the bells and whistles. This at least provides you a skeleton so that you can say, okay, well, I need to think about this. I need to think about this other thing. And I find that great.
Oh, it's really helpful. I'm just curious now if some of these are just like random tables or.
We'll scroll down and find out.
Let's see. Oh yeah, like here, community age is a table, and they explain each of the things from the tables, which is good. Unlike like AD&D First Edition, the Dungeon Master's Guide, where they would give you these random tables of stuff, but never explain what they were. So you're sitting there going, "What's a Girsame Girium," or something like that, because Gary loved to use French things, which I guess are more Norman things. But anyway.
So Terry, this is actually kind of appealing because the problem that sometimes you'll encounter with pre-made campaigns is that somebody's read it. Somebody's already digested the material.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no surprise. There's no mystery. They're like, oh, yeah, I've read about this city and you're going to meet this mad evil wizard. And, oh, yeah, there's this king and he'll steal all your money. And the opportunity you have here is you can create something that's mystery. That's, something that none of the players have seen before and something truly unique. And there's no spoilers and they can actually go in and, explore and discover the city. And that has a very strong appeal to me compared to campaign settings where, of course, everybody has the opportunity to read the book and digest everything and know all the secrets ahead of time.
And they've got a second Kickstarter for another item in this particular series going right now that's about kingdom level building.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find the link and post it in the private chat for you guys, because I can't remember exactly what the details are, but that's backing that one is what reminded me of this one, so it's why I snagged it off the shelf.
Well, it looks like it's a great supplement. You can see as James is scrolling here, you're getting different types of governments, which is always good.
If you've never built anything on your own, it seems like this book is something to help give you the crutches you need to go ahead and not feel like you're lost in trying to build everything. And that's one of the things that scares people away that have never done this before is they don't know what they don't know. And this kind of book at least gives you a roadmap for building what you need to build. And once you've got something built, you can always customize it even further, including things that are not in this book. And that's what makes that kind of thing good.
And it says it's for 5e, but honestly, this could probably be adapted to any role-playing game.
Exactly, yeah.
one of the people in the chat has a question for
Yep,
for us.
I was gonna bring it up. So Dana asks, okay, question for you guys. What is the best way to maintain your plan for a campaign? That was one of the things that always threw me off and kept me from running games myself. So what is the best way to maintain your plan for a campaign?
Flexibility, because you're never going to be able to maintain your plan.
My method is to not have a plan and instead have my villains have a plan. They have a goal and they're trying to work their way to execute that goal. I don't have the plan, they do, and we'll kind of like improvise based off of what the players do and what the villains do to make that plan come to fruition. But if a thorn comes in the side, it won't derail me, it'll just derail the villain.
For me, I have, well, I've been told I have very impressive improv skills, and I've always been able just to improvise on the spot. I come up with a quick laundry list of what I want to have in my campaign, and then from there I just springboard off of that, and I'm able to improv and make it up as I go. And sometimes it's successful, and sometimes I have to go back and rework some stuff. But ideally, I mean, there's to answer the question directly, there's a couple different ways you can go about it. The way that I do it is usually most of the time I improv. I work off of the other players, and if they introduce something or they seem interested in something, I'll subtly bend or manipulate the campaign to kind of lean in whatever direction they're going.
Yeah, I mean, so don't follow my lead on this question. And I think Bryce and Dana remember the campaign. I don't know, maybe Dana was in it for a session or two, but I used to run a Cyberpunk 2013 game. We were talking about this earlier. It's like, yeah, dating myself with a game from the 80s, RPG from the 80s. But the game was actually eventually titled by at least the players as Kevlar Pajamas. And the reason is because how I maintained the game was just basically trying to find more and more interesting ways to kill the players. And it got to the point where people would come into the middle of the night when they were asleep, like ninjas would attack them in their bedrooms. So the name Kevlar Pajamas, because it was like, well, shoot, we can't even rest. We have to be in Kevlar 24/7 because something's going to happen. There was bombs under people's beds and all kinds of stuff. But that was almost like my plan to maintain game was to kind of keep a Home Alone attitude towards the whole thing. It's just like, what sort of traps, tricks, or assassins can I send after the players to keep it going? And the game ran for a long time. It honestly, Kevlar Pajamas, I think, went for about 3 years, maybe. So that was, it was back in the day when our friend Ian Toll was gaming with us. So that was, and you guys don't know Ian. Well, Bryce knows Ian, Dana knows Ian, but he was definitely an interesting character to game with. So
well, it's funny is you're joking, but in a way that's kind of brilliant. Is the players can't plot for the future if you've got them constantly worried about the present right now. It's funny now. I've only run a couple of campaigns, and usually mine was very small. I'd have one point of interest that they'd be interested in poking into, but kind of like what the other folks were saying is just going see what they want to explore and then start expanding off of that one, and like you said, man, oh gosh, I hate improv. But even though I run an improv theater, but I mean, it's like, was it improvise it first, and then when you realize going, oh, this is what their jam is, then you can go back and get a little bit more in detail on that. But the biggest thing is the lesson I learned is never try to plan what the players are going to do, because they're never going to go there. You know, you got this great little thing on there. They're going to get involved in the city thing. You don't have a city, they're going to get involved in the town politics. You know, somehow they're going to assume that the mayor is a vampire, and immediately he's not. He's just this guy. Leave him alone. Out, and you know.
All right, so you just brought back Dickens Fair memories for me when the guild thought that Mr. Pickwick was a vampire, and we were
Mr. Fezziwig. Yes.
Oh, is it Mr. Fezziwig? Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Ebenezer Scrooge was supposedly apprenticed to him, and you know he was. Look at Ebenezer Scrooge, 97 years old, but there's Mr. Fezziwig continuously every night running his little party. You know. The man needed a steak, and a bulb of garlic showed into his mouth.
I played a game of Top Secret back in the 80s, back with the original set of it. And one of my best friend was playing a spy that his history, I forget how he picked this kind of thing. His negative flaw was he was a professional wrestler, an ex-professional wrestler that ran off and kept the heavyweight belt. And so the WWF was continually hunting him around the globe, supposedly trying to steal this thing back. And I've got him in this spy thing. He's in an airport and he's trying to follow somebody that he's spotted, Mission Impossible style. And he ducks through the door and it's all dark and he's sneaking around and he hears all this noise and whatnot going around. And suddenly the lights come on and he's in a ring and they're ding, 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 ding. And the player's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this to me.
So, Mike, we cut you off a few sentences ago. I think maybe not. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just going to add a comment on that. Anticipate. Well, it's impossible to anticipate what the players are going to do. They always will catch you off guard. What you think is a throwaway sentence will suddenly become a main focal point for the next 3 or 4 adventures. That's happened a couple times, and each time you just need to roll with it. And even if you need to tell your players, hey, listen, this is totally unexpected. I need about 10 or 15 minutes just to sit down and jot down some notes. You guys go outside or go grab a snack or something. Just give me a couple minutes here to try and put my notes on paper. That's understandable because it happens. You just some throwaway character suddenly becomes the main focal point of the adventure, and
Randy Butternubs.
Yep, and you just got to roll with it. My personal experience, one of my last games I ran, the players decided to take a shortcut through what is called the Underdark and Forgotten Realms, which is this vast labyrinth of caves. And I decided to turn this into a long, drawn-out adventure that was going to span several adventures. Well, it turned out that the players really did want just a shortcut. They just wanted to go in and out. And once I found that out, I was quickly allowed them the opportunity to exit the labyrinth, the Underdark.
A year later.
Yes. But yeah, the point being is you always have to listen to your players and kind of feed off their energy.
It's funny is when you mention on that is I've seen both of them, and surprisingly, both techniques can be good. It's really really fun when your GM is kind of rolls with your punches and going, oh okay, and then follows along with you. But it's also surprisingly and strangely fun when your GM is pushing against you, and it's almost like player rebellion where you're pushing right back. It almost becomes a fun little meta game in itself of going, no, we're going down to this thing. We want to know what that gazebo is,
Yep.
All right, so we are coming close to time, but I wanted to go ahead and end the show turn over to Mike with any possible GM tips for the week.
Okay, so in one of the previous podcasts, I had mentioned that some of the groups I've been, there's a whole influx of new game masters, and there's a lot of conversations about starting campaigns, starting their own games, how to be a GM, and one of the conversations was on miniatures. So miniatures for me started way back in the early 80s. I'm going to throw a name out, Grenadier Miniatures. I don't know if anyone remembers those. They were, for those that don't, they were some of the first that were on the market, and they were either made of lead or pewter, and they were able to be put on the table, and that was really the first miniature that I was exposed to. Things have come a long way since. I'm just going to pop one up that I happen to have on my table here. So there's a fire giant. Let me see. Here is a evil tree. That's called a Trent. Or yeah, that's right, a Trent. And this is one that I recently got commissioned that I'm kind of happy with. I don't know if you guys can see the detail on that, but it is an orc with a very serious looking axe. At any rate, there's some people that come up in the comments that say, well, gee, I really love to get miniatures. I don't have a lot of money to do so. What would you recommend? And some recommendations that I have on either a no budget or a low budget. The first obviously would be graph paper. You don't need to have miniatures. You can just put down a piece of graph paper. You can draw on it, put X's and O's on the paper and say, this is where you are. This is where the monsters are, and then just go from there. Scaling up from there, the next would be wet dry erase board, where you have the squares. You can just use wet dry erase markers. It's pretty much the same concept, only obviously you can reuse. Other people use candies. You can just use, believe it or not, little starburst candies are excellent for on a grid. You can just go ahead and drop those down, and you can have whoever. What I used for a long time before I even started using miniatures was dice, just different types of dice. And bigger sizes could be big bad guys, and different colors could be different people. And you can just put those down on a piece of paper, and you can just tell your players, okay, he's about this far away from you. You don't really need to get very detailed. And then finally, one of the other things I've done is I've used poker chips, and I've just put faces on poker chips.
Oh,
and I've had those. The trick with this, of course, is trying to find graph paper that's big enough to complement the poker chip. But those, obviously, if you don't, if you're not too concerned about movement, you can just grab a bunch of poker chips and throw those down on a piece of paper, and then just tell people he's about 10 feet away from you, and so on and so forth. Those are all ideas that you can have that is on a low or no budget. If you don't have any money for miniatures, if you have some money and you're trying to figure out what you should buy, I would recommend, if you're a player, maybe going in on a Kickstarter or something like that. You can usually, if you're willing to put in on an investment, you can usually get a whole bunch of miniatures. Sometimes some of the dealers will have a clearance sale. You'll be able to get a bulk of miniatures. They may not be painted, but you'll be able to at least get a decent amount that you can use. As far as game masters go, I would recommend getting the ones that always show up in your campaign, the orcs, the skeletons, the ones that are going to be on the board time and again. Don't go for the weird and exotic, because you'll never use it. It'll be used once, and then it'll be up on the shelf and you'll never see it again. If you're going to buy miniatures, go for the ones that will be on the table time and again. But lastly, the last thing I wanted to say is, while this game was created as a war game, I believe when Gary Gygax originally made it, it was kind of a spawn of a war game. He had always said from the very beginning that imagination is the key to this game, and that miniatures, while they're nice, they're not needed. Theater of the mind is always the first place, and you can just, as long as you describe the scene, your players will be more than happy to go along with it. And that's it.
I have to say, Mike, that I like how you led this off with saying that lead miniatures are one of the first things you were exposed to. So that was very clever.
Well, the thing about lead miniatures too is that I spent all this time trying to paint them, and I'm going to admit I was a horrible painter. I couldn't paint lead miniatures. Still can't paint miniatures. But the problem is that since they were made of lead or pewter, if you dropped them and they hit the ground, they would chip or they would bend. If you stepped on them, forget it. It was a lost cause. It really was a very disappointing situation when those little lead figures ended up underneath a book or underneath somebody's foot. So
I had lead miniatures of a Soviet tank battalion.
Oh wow!
You drop one of those, that barrel is gonna bend.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention is also there's a lot of printouts too. If you aren't interested in any of this other stuff, you can go online and you can print out terrain. You can print out tokens. There's all kinds of stuff that you can print out now that you can, as long as you have access to a printer and you don't mind cutting with scissors, you can get all kinds of stuff and you can throw that down on the board as well. So a lot of options out there for people who want to use miniatures but don't have the money to do so.
One of the things I'll follow up with is that I watched a YouTube video, and it was someone who did like Dungeons and Dragons under $20 or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but the guy went to a dollar store. He bought Christmas wrapping paper because when you turn it over, there's already a grid on the back of it.
Yep.
So he got that.
I saw that video.
Yeah. He also like went and got weird little minis that you can actually get at dollar store, and he got like a Princess Peach and something else and like a little elf gnome thing. And then he said, he just went online, downloaded the D&D SRD for free.
Yep.
And gave him enough to play the game and the rules, and like under $20. I mean, it looked weird. It was kind of like, well, it's Princess Peach and whatever it was, Godzilla. I can't remember what he actually bought, but yeah, I think, and he bought markers and pens and stuff. But under $20, printed out the rules, and he's playing D&D. So I mean, that's actually a great, a frugal way that if you don't have the money, because it's an investment to play a role-playing game.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
But
Really? I don't know anything about that.
I'm sorry, Bryce.
Oh yeah, and it's if you've ever been to GaryCon and seen the original things, 3/4 of the original figures that they used were like Green Army Men or Cowboys or Indians or. Yeah. I always thought that the Rust Monster and the Boulet looked familiar, and I found out it was from this package from the 70s, 78-cent package of prehistoric monsters.
Cool.
Not only did the DM use those as the marker in the game, the artists actually took the image of that toy and made that it became the canon Rust Monster / Boulet. And they're just these weird little dinosaurs from China from back in the set. I actually own that package on there.
That's funny.
That's awesome.
Oh, one thing I wanted to add. For Canadians, you can go to Dollarama. Instead of getting poker chips, you can get like fake Canadian dollars. They're like little plastic and like the shape of a loonie or a toonie or whatever. And they're a good size for either like a miniature base or just for like a token to like put an image on.
If you're into painting, you could go the poker chip route, and if you're talented enough, you could paint your own faces on there.
Oh yeah. I thought you were going to say you could paint a loony onto it.
Well, you could do that too, I'm sure.
Or if you're really eccentric, you can get a backyard and put tape out to make a grid, and then invite a bunch of people over and say, "All right, you're the orc." And
I've heard steam tunnels are great this time of year.
Yeah.
Go grab one of your people on the street. Hey, I need a monster. Come over here. I need you to stand right here.
Here's $5. Be an orc. All right. So speaking of money and things, we do have I always do that. Use banners. You're talking to points. All right. So money's fun. Money's great. Money helps pay for StreamYard and things like that. So if you can, go to our Patreon and donate a few bucks, because that would be really helpful. You're probably watching this on YouTube, so hey, YouTube. I've always put up. I gotta redo these. And also, last but not least, if you want to buy G-strings, masks, whatever with our logo on it, you can from Teesprings. And with that said, I'm JC. You can find me over at Grindhouse Media on the old Twitter box, or now X. So, Bryce, you want to do a bit of a adios?
Oh, yes. I have nothing, so we'll leave it at that.
All right, Terry.
I'm Terry Mixon. I'm an author. Find me on Amazon.
All right, Mike.
I'm GM Mike. You can find me here.
All right.
But don't, because he's got like an alarm and stuff.
And Gwen.
I'm Gwen. Have a good night. Bye.
All right. And let us find our outro, and we're out.